Hi everyone, I'm Gordon Bonus with Daily Xtra. With me now is the amazing Irish author Colm Tóibín. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Your new novel, Nora Webster, is about a woman in her 40s living in the small Irish town of Enniscorthy. She's recently widowed, she has two small sons still living at home, and she's trying to figure out how best to provide for them and for herself. It's clearly the story about your family and your mother. Can you talk about the level of autobiography in the novel and why you chose to write about your mother now?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a tapestry, it's made up of two sorts of wool. And one piece of wool is memory, and the other is invention. Mm-hmm. And so when one doesn't work, I just reach for the other. And the job is to try and, get them together so it looks like a single piece of wool. But my father died when I was 12, and so to try and, I couldn't have written about myself because there was almost no one there. And there was so much silence and so much left out and so much that didn't connect. That to try and put that together, I think I might get one short story of 3 pages out of, walking home from school thinking about nothing much. But one thing we did do, myself and my younger brother, is we did watch her because she was the one who was changing. And, at the beginning, she was our mother who was married to our father, and they were there. And the next time she was a widow, and then the house was filled with people, and then they were all gone, and there were just the 3 of us. And there was no money, so she had to find a job. And then suddenly she would change, and her attitudes, and then she would often go back to being the way she was before. So she was unpredictable. She was very interesting. And also, she would come home from this new job of hers and tell us everything that had happened at work. And I remembered everything. They often had a problem with me. I mean, it went right through. It wasn't just because my father died, that I could remember everything that adults ever said. So I was the most dangerous little object because I could say a year later, no, that's not what she said. She said, I said, get out, shut up, you put him out. And so I remembered it all the years, the tiny little things. And so sometimes those tiny little things were in the book. When they didn't work dramatically, when I needed one more thing, I invented.
Your mother died in 2000, I believe. So why did you write about her struggle with grief now?
Because I couldn't, I started the book actually before she died in 2000. I started in the spring of 2000 and she died in the fall of 2000. I really was circling around it. That story, I was finding metaphors for it, I was writing about it in other ways. But it struck me eventually, that why don't you just write that story down of that small house and those few years and those 3 people in a way that I mightn't have had the confidence to do earlier, feeling this is not enough for a book. Like nothing happened. It wasn't as though they all went to America or there was a fire. That it was just a slow change in atmosphere as people recovered from something they didn't even know what it was. And for that, I think you really need to be sure that you can do it properly. So I waited all the years to do it.
Part of the slow change in Nora, the character of Nora, is a slow realization or a slowly taking very small charge of her life in very small steps. She sort of comes to a better understanding of herself. This story is told against the backdrop of growing anger over the oppression of Catholics in Northern Ireland, especially leading up to the events of Bloody Sunday. Is it too reductionist to talk about the story of Nora as almost a decolonization of the spirit? You have a lot of that in a lot of your characters, throwing off the needs and expectations of others, whether they're men in the case of women, wives and mothers throwing off the needs of their husbands, the Irish throwing off the English, or even gays throwing off what the heterosexual world has told of them.
Yeah, that I hadn't really thought about it like that before, but it's quite important that it's the late 1960s. And what in fact she's doing is she's following a feminist narrative without knowing the word, except for some women who are screaming on TV that are very far from her. They're in Dublin. But she is actually doing that without knowing she's doing it. That the autonomy that she's developing is actually a feminist one. And but so that the years are very important, but all that is in the background in a way. Mm-hmm. The debates about women's rights are on television. Northern Ireland is on television. The moon landing is on television. Mm-hmm. So that actually what I needed to concentrate on was her face, her change, what's going on imperceptibly within her, ways in which she's becoming independent. I'm also interested in the idea of taking a word like grief, a big word, or taking a word like mother, even a bigger word, and reducing them, getting rid of the big words and reducing them to other things like, what was it like on a given day if grief became sadness or disappeared or dissolved and people forgot and then remembered for a second? And with mother, where mother was really motherly some of the time, if there was a crisis, if her loyalty was demanded, but some of the time actually sort of forgot she had these children, was thinking about herself or something else, and just presuming, look, they seem to be well fed. They're going to school, they're coming home from school, they must be okay. And so her motherliness often disappears in the book, and she becomes quite self-absorbed, and unpredictable. Which I thought would be dramatic. Instead of having her permanently in the state of mother, I am a mother, I must mother. Why? I mean, often that isn't the way where any of us were brought up. We're brought up with people who often went their own way. And so in the novel, I'm always watching out for a moment where get her to do something that you don't expect her to do now. And it often could be have a big fight with her sisters, or have a fight at work, or just seem distracted, or start spending money when she's no money. And then other times become immensely loyal if there's a problem with one of the children. So it's just, it's almost as though you're working with colors, and you're trying to grade them and grade them and grade them, so there's not one single color dominating.
She has a very ambivalent relationship with the small town. It's very claustrophobic. She doesn't like the busybodiness of it, that everyone knows everyone's business. And yet, against herself, she gets strength from it.
In other words, it's a big cliche in Irish writing, oh, a small town is filled with busybodies, the valley of the squinting windows, everyone's looking, and it's awful. But actually, that's not quite true. But also, even if it is true, it's no use for a novel. You need the opposite to come in as well and take over. So what happens to her really is, there are women especially who really annoy her by just coming around saying, are you all right? And oh, the widow, and coming to her house and sitting there, basically looking for gossip. But then she makes a few very close friends who are women who really look after her, and don't just look after her, but amuse her, take her places, make her think about things she's never thought about before, such as music. And so that those friendships actually nourish her enormously. And they belong to the small town as much as the busybodies do.
Thank you for sharing the story of Nora with us. It's a very beautiful novel, and it's something I'll treasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.